We do have breaking news tonight, a deeply divided moment playing out in American history as we come on the air. President Trump has just been impeached on both Article 1, abuse of power, and on Article 2, obstruction of Congress. The votes down party lines as predicted. And all day long here, we've been watching the short bursts of anger, the closing arguments from both sides. Democrats arguing the evidence was clear, arguing the president used the power of his office for personal and political gain with this election coming.
Tonight, what unfolded in that hearing room was not just another routine exchange between lawmakers and a cabinet official. It was something far more revealing. What began as a standard line of questioning quickly spiraled into a moment that many watching will not soon forget. Voices rose, accusations flew. And for a brief stretch of time, the carefully managed tone of the proceedings cracked wide open. At the center of it all stood Attorney General Pam Bondi, facing sharp questions that seemed to hit closer to home than expected, and across from her, members of Congress who were not prepared to let the moment pass quietly. The hearing was supposed to focus on oversight, transparency, and accountability. Lawmakers entered the chamber prepared with notes, documents, and pointed inquiries. The atmosphere at first was measured, even formal. But beneath the surface, tension was already simmering. For weeks, controversy had been building over communications, emails, and the broader issue of who knew what and when. Lawmakers signaled they were ready to demand clarity. Bondi signaled she was ready to defend her record. The questioning started in a calm, procedural tone. Members cited documents they wanted entered into the record. They referenced media reports and prior statements. At first, Bondi responded in the familiar way seasoned officials often do. Deliberate phrasing, careful wording, and repeated assurances that the Department of Justice operates independently and within the bounds of the law. But then came the pivot. A lawmaker zeroed in on specific emails and the timeline surrounding them. The question was direct. The implication was sharper. Did Bondi have knowledge of certain communications earlier than she had previously indicated? Had her public statements aligned precisely with internal records? The congressperson pressed. Bondi paused, then responded firmly, pushing back against what she described as insinuations. She emphasized that she had always acted appropriately and that any suggestion otherwise was politically motivated. The exchange grew more intense. What made the moment stand out was not just the substance of the question, but the reaction it provoked. Bondi leaned forward, her tone shifting from composed explanation to visible frustration. She accused her critics of attempting to distort facts for partisan gain. She insisted that she would not allow her character to be impugned without a response. The room grew quieter as the temperature rose. Lawmakers on the other side were quick to respond. They argued that oversight is not an attack, but a constitutional responsibility. One member pointed out that the American public deserves straightforward answers, especially when the issue involves high-profile individuals and sensitive investigations. Another reminded the Attorney General that under oath, precision matters. Words matter, timelines matter. For a moment, the back and forth became less about the documents themselves and more about credibility. Bondi reiterated that her previous testimony had been accurate to the best of her knowledge at the time. A lawmaker countered by reading from a transcript of an earlier appearance, highlighting language that now appeared ambiguous. The contrast was unmistakable. Observers noted how quickly the exchange departed from the typical script of Washington hearings. There were interruptions. The chair attempted to restore order more than once. Members raised points of order. At one point, the gavel came down firmly as voices overlapped. The spectacle underscored how politically charged the moment had become. Beyond the theatrics, however, lay serious questions. The emails in question involved communications between individuals with significant public profiles. The controversy centers on whether there was transparency in how the Department of Justice handled related matters. Critics argue that even the perception of inconsistency undermines public trust. Supporters of Bondi argue that the scrutiny is disproportionate and politically driven. As the exchange continued, Bondi shifted her strategy. Rather than focusing solely on rebutting the specific claim, she broadened her defense. She highlighted reforms she said her department had implemented. She pointed to increased cooperation with oversight bodies. She emphasized her long career in public service and insisted that she has always upheld the rule of law. Yet the questioning did not relent. A congressperson asked whether Bondi would commit to providing additional documentation to clarify the timeline. Bondi responded that she would review the request but cautioned against releasing materials that could compromise ongoing matters. That answer drew further criticism. Lawmakers argued that transparency should not be conditional. The tension in the room mirrored a larger national debate about accountability and trust in institutions. For many Americans watching, the details of email timestamps and procedural nuances may blur together, but the broader theme is unmistakable. When high-ranking officials appear before Congress, the expectation is clarity, candor, and consistency. At one point, a member directly asked Bondi whether she stood by her prior statement without qualification. Bondi answered yes. The lawmaker then cited a specific line from that earlier testimony, suggesting it conflicted with newly surfaced information. Bondi pushed back forcefully, asserting that the interpretation being offered was inaccurate. The exchange was sharp enough that even seasoned observers commented on its intensity. The political stakes are significant. For critics of the administration, moments like this reinforce concerns about transparency. For supporters, the aggressive questioning reinforces their belief that certain members of Congress are intent on scoring political points rather than seeking truth. The hearing became a microcosm of that divide. As the session progressed, other members weighed in. Some used their allotted time to defend Bondi, praising her record and accusing opponents of grandstanding. Others doubled down on calls for further investigation. The back and forth underscored how oversight hearings can become arenas for broader partisan battles. What perhaps resonated most was the tone shift. Bondi, who has often projected confidence and composure, displayed visible irritation. Critics seized on that as evidence that the question struck a nerve. Supporters interpreted it as justified frustration at what they viewed as unfair insinuations. Body language, as much as words, became part of the narrative. The chair attempted to steer the conversation back to policy issues, but the moment had already crystallized. Clips of the exchange quickly circulated online. Commentators dissected each sentence, each pause, each raised eyebrow. In today's media environment, such moments rarely stay confined to the hearing room. The broader issue remains unresolved. Will additional documents be produced? Will there be follow-up hearings? Some lawmakers indicated they intend to pursue the matter further. Bondi, for her part, signaled that she is prepared to continue defending her record. It is worth noting that oversight is a cornerstone of the constitutional system. Congress has the authority to question executive branch officials. Those officials, in turn, have the responsibility to respond truthfully. The friction between those roles is not new. What is new is the speed at which such clashes become national spectacles. For the American public, the key takeaway may not be the granular details of the dispute, but the perception of transparency. Trust in institutions has been fragile in recent years. Moments like this either reinforce confidence through clarity or deepen skepticism through ambiguity. As the hearing drew toward its conclusion, the intensity subsided somewhat. Members returned to prepared questions on other topics. Bondi's tone steadied. Yet the earlier clash lingered in the air. It was clear that this was the exchange that would define the day. After the session adjourned, statements quickly followed. Lawmakers held brief press scrums outside the chamber. Some described Bondi's answers as evasive. Others described the questioning as a political stunt. Bondi issued her own statement reiterating her commitment to transparency and the rule of law. The coming days will likely bring further developments. Document requests may be formalized. Editorial boards may weigh in. Advocacy groups on both sides will amplify their preferred narrative. In Washington, a single exchange can ripple outward in unpredictable ways. Ultimately, the question is whether this moment leads to substantive clarification or simply becomes another chapter in the ongoing cycle of partisan conflict. Oversight hearings are meant to shed light. Whether that light leads to resolution depends on what happens next. For now, what remains undeniable is that the exchange captured attention. It exposed raw nerves. It highlighted the tension inherent in holding powerful officials to account. And it reminded viewers that even in highly choreographed settings, unscripted moments can erupt. As debates continue, the focus will return to the core issue. Did the Attorney General provide a complete and consistent account? Bondi insists she did. Critics remain unconvinced. The truth, as always, lies in documentation and follow-through. In the end, the hearing served as a vivid illustration of how accountability unfolds in real time. It was messy, it was heated, it was emblematic of the broader climate. Whether one views it as a necessary confrontation or an unfortunate spectacle likely depends on political perspective. What cannot be dismissed is the significance of transparency in public office. When questions arise, clear answers matter. When discrepancies appear, they demand clarification. That is not partisan, it is foundational. As this story develops, attention will turn to whether further evidence emerges and whether both sides engage in good faith. The American public deserves nothing less. And in a system built on checks and balances, moments like this, however contentious, are part of the process. The gavel may have ended the session, but the debate is far from over.